Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Matthew Snabria, and in this video, I want to talk about knowing your worth as an engineer when you're interviewing. So I had an interview experience where I withdrew from the process and I delivered feedback to the recruiter about why I withdrew and more information like that. I want to show you some of the emails I sent back and forth with this recruiter when I withdrew, and I also want to chat more about like what I was thinking at the time, right? Like why did I do this? What was going on that led me to these decisions, and what can you do in order to better prepare yourself for similar situations. So I was in an interview experience a while back, and I was interviewing for an engineering role. There was talks about possibly interviewing for an engineering management role, but they told me that I didn't have enough on paper management experience, even though I have an extensive history of teaching and other leadership experience as well. So I was kind of, a little bit thrown off by that because I was trying to see like, hey, maybe it's time for me to pivot into management. Um, but that didn't happen. So I ended up interviewing for an engineering role, right? And it was basically between two teams, and I interviewed with both people on both of those teams in order to get more information to make a decision of like, hey, do I want to go with this team or that team, right? Do I want to enter the full interview loop for either one of those teams? So that's what I did. I had the recruiter screen, I had the interview with the people from both teams. And after that, I was just like, you know what? I'm not really feeling this. But the recruiter reached out to me and asked me, like, hey, we're ready to take you to the next round. Can you enter your availability? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I entered my availability. And then the next day I was like, you know what? No, this is not me. I don't want to do this. I'm actually going to say no. So I sent an email to the recruiter, and here's what I said, right? I said, out of respect for everyone's time, even my own, right? Because part of interviewing is part of knowing your worth is respecting your own time and knowing how valuable your own time is, right? Obviously, you should respect other people's time, but you need to respect your own time as well. So I said, out of respect for everyone's time, even my own, I've decided to withdraw from this interview process. While I enjoyed my chats with the people that I spoke to, I didn't get that wow factor that I was looking for. It didn't excite me, right? I wasn't excited by the prospect of continuing. It wasn't like I didn't have that inner, excitement that usually is present when you're really excited to go for a new role. So I was missing that wow factor that would make me want to leave my current role. And I said, I'm happy to keep in touch if things change in the future, and good luck on your search for candidates. Now, when I sent this out, I was expecting, like a great, goodbye, have fun, like, just a humdrum response, like, all right, thank you, next, right? I was expecting one of those responses. And that's not what I got. Instead, the recruiter sent me this response. They said, hey, Matthew, bummer on our end. What do you think was missing? Any other feedback you can share about the interview process thus far? Would love to stay in touch for the future for sure. And I was kind of taken aback by this response because I was like expecting them to say, get out of my face, moving on to the next person, goodbye. But they didn't, right? They asked like what was missing, and they prompted me for sharing some feedback. So I took this as an opportunity to actually really voice why I didn't want to go here, why I didn't want to proceed with this process. And I did. I sent a response saying, hello, the interview process is pretty standard after reading the page that they linked me. I don't have any reservations there. I believe both of the roles were intriguing from a technical perspective. It's obvious that the company is growing and experiencing typical growing pains, and then I listed two growing pains in red there, which I'll get back to in a second. And then I said I'm not entirely convinced that I would be in a position of influence to affect the necessary change that comes with these growing pains. So let's unpack that before we go to the next paragraph. The roles were cool. I enjoyed my conversations with both teams. I thought the engineering was great. I thought the company's pretty cool. I didn't have a problem with any of that, right? However, I've already been through the growing pains with companies. I've already had to work at startups and advocate for change and push forward with things. And I wasn't really in a position where I felt excited to do this again, especially not for this particular company at this particular time in its life for that particular compensation package for that particular role, right? Like the thing, like everything didn't line up to make me say, you know what, I'll deal with these growing pains and I'll fight for them again. I'll take up the battle again, right? Like that didn't happen. Those two red redactions that I posted there in parentheses, those were the things that I found out in the interview that made me realize that they had growing pains. And those are two things that were like not red flags. I don't want to say red flags, but they stood out to me as reasons like, I don't really know if I want to deal with this again, right? So I don't want to give those examples away because just for identification purposes. But those two examples that are redacted there, I would have never learned about them had I not asked the interviewers questions. And the question that I asked that got me these two redacted answers here was, if you were given a magic wand and you can change any one thing about your role, what would it be? And these are the answers I got from both people, right? From one team and the other. And I just want to pause for a moment and remind you that when you're in an interview, you are interviewing the company just like they're interviewing you. So always, always, always ask questions. You can take the question that I just gave you, the magic wand one, if you'd like, and you can ask that yourself. But remember, ask questions. You have to gauge whether or not it's a place that you feel safe working at, the place that you feel passionate working at, a place that you want to work at, right? It's not just about the money, it's not just about the role, it's about the combination of everything for your life at your point in time. And these two things that I learned made me not want to move forward from that perspective, right? And I would have never learned them had I not asked the question. So make sure you're asking your questions in your interviews, right? It's not, don't just leave the interview saying, oh, I don't have any questions, goodbye. Ask questions that matter, questions that are going to show you, like, does this company align with what I'm looking for? Does it align with my morals, my values? Would I feel comfortable working here? Ask questions that get you those answers, right? That's what's going to be meaningful. Going on to the next paragraph, I said, oh, actually, circling back for a second. And I followed that up saying that I don't feel like I was going to be in a position of influence to affect the necessary change that comes with these growing pains. That was a big one. Remember, I mentioned earlier that I was looking at an engineering management role possibly, but they said I didn't have enough management experience. Well, this is where that came in from, right? I would have probably been fine with these growing pains if I was entering as a management role and I had the ability to affect the change necessary. But now I'm entering as a senior engineer role. I might not have the ability to influence this change, right? To affect this change. So given that, I'm not really convinced, right? You're not selling me, is what I'm trying to say, right? Going into the next paragraph, though, I said another concern that I have is diversity. I didn't get to cover this topic much in my interviews with both of the people because we ran out of time. I know that this company is still small, but looking at the careers page didn't inspire confidence that diversity is a core focus. Perhaps that is already changing, but I just wanted to provide that honest feedback. Now, this is not like a shot at the company saying that they suck. This is not that, right? Because they don't. They're small. They have different problems than larger companies. Like, things happen, diversity happens over time. It's something that you constantly iterate on and get better at. However, I looked at the careers page and I saw white man, white man, white man, white man, right? Like, majority of the people there were white males. And it's in my career at this point in my time, I've already fought for diversity. I've referred people, I've hired people, I've fought for diversity. I've went through this. I don't want to have to champion for this again at a new company when I'm already starting from behind, right? Like, not me, not at this point in my life. I didn't want to go through that again. I I am of the opinion that diversity is diversity in the culture for a company is it's like a foundation of a house, right? You build it and then you build on top of that foundation. And if you build that foundation wrong, you better change it before you put a house on top. Because if you don't, it's really expensive to go back and change it and go back and modify it. And it takes time. So I view diversity like that, right? I saw the careers page. I saw primarily white men. I rarely saw, non-white, whatever. I don't want to be the only Spanish person on the team anymore. I don't want to work with at a place or with no women on my team, right? I don't want to work with no non-white people on my team. I didn't want that again. I've been there, I've advocated, and I'm kind of honestly tired of speaking up for it because when you speak up for certain things like this, you put a target on your back and you become a troublemaker. And I was honestly not, this role wasn't worth me going through that headache again and putting that target on my back again just for this. But I wanted to point it out because if you want people like me, right? If you want people that I know, if you want diverse people, if you want this talent group to come to your company, you're gonna need to fix this diversity problem before you start attracting talent like me, right? Like, or like, like talent that I know as well. If you can't get that right, I don't really want to help you get that right now. So this was the bigger of the two, in my opinion, right? I was okay with going through the growing pains again, but this one, it was just like, no, I can't. I literally could not do it, right? I couldn't bring myself to say yes. I would take a role here because in my heart I knew it was wrong, and I knew that they didn't value diversity the way I did at this point in time. So I said no. And I'm not saying any of this to say like, oh, I'm better. Look at me. I'm the no. I'm saying this is I got information along the interview process that showed that their values, my values, we just weren't lining up, right? I couldn't go forward with that. So after I sent this over, I was expecting, some sort of response like, great, thanks, bye. But the recruiter came back and says, hey, this is really great feedback. I really appreciate you taking the time to write down some of these thoughts. I'm personally hoping to drive some of the change of the things you outlined below. Again, looking forward to staying in touch. And I was actually excited to see this response because finally there's someone that receives feedback and doesn't get personally offended by it or doesn't take it like negatively. They say, you know what? Thank you. I appreciate your point of view and I'm trying to change it, right? That's awesome. But had I not given this feedback, they wouldn't be aware that that's the perspective that people see them from, or at least some people see them from. They wouldn't have been aware that there's more change to be done in these areas, right? Like this is a great reception of feedback. And this made me excited to share my feedback. And then I left off with my last message saying, you're very welcome. I'm of the opinion that you can't solve what you can't measure. Giving feedback is always hit or miss because no matter how kind you are, you never know how people will take it and whether or not it'll burn a bridge. And then I said, good luck on driving the change. I'm always happy to chat if anything. Thank you for reaching out to me and setting up these interviews. And that's where it ended. Beautiful conversation, well respected, kind, direct, right? Kind of like a tough love convo, but honestly, a really good interaction here. And that was the end of this particular experience. But after this happened, I started reflecting a little bit on it, and I was like, I gotta make a video about it. I want people to know that they have the power to say no. You have the power to decide your worth and to withdraw from these processes and to deliver feedback about why you're withdrawing, right? It's not just a one-sided thing where the company's in control. You as an engineer, as a person, you need to go look at what your values are, what your beliefs are, what you want to see in your role, right? Not just from the compensation side, but from the culture, the diversity, the how do they treat people, all of that you need to have ready when you're interviewing. So that as you're interviewing and asking questions and finding out information, you can see, is this company aligning with, right? Are we aligning with our values correctly or are we deviating, right? And granted, it's not going to be the same for everyone. What you will accept and what I will accept will be completely different. You might say, listen, Matt, I need the money. I'll take whatever. That's fine. That's your situation. Go for it. Someone else might say like, oh, no matter how much they pay me, I'll never do that. That's also fine, right? It's a case by case basis. But what I wanted to get across in this video is that you need to go figure out what your values and your beliefs are, get them ready so that you can do this in your next interview, right? And don't just let the interviews be one-sided. Make sure you're asking them questions the same way they're asking you questions. If you want to use the question I gave you before, right? If you have a magic wand and you can change one thing about your current role, what would it be? Go for it. I find that's a great question. And that's a question that I ask whether or not I'm on the interviewer side or the interviewee side. I always ask that question in every interview I have because I find it leads to really good conversation, right? So again, take this with you. Don't be afraid to say no, to withdraw. What I'm trying to get across is that your opinion, your voice matters. So use it. People can't change what they don't know. So don't just say, I hate this company, the red flags, goodbye, and leave. You're making the world lesser for that. Deliver your feedback. Let them know you didn't get me because of these reasons. You didn't catch me because of these reasons. You didn't excite me because of these reasons, right? And you will continue not to catch people like me because of these reasons. If you want to see this better diversity, if you want to see better pay transparency, if you want to see better culture, see better roles, if you want to see the better companies doing better things with recruiting, you need to deliver this feedback as well, right? Don't just say, I'm out of here, goodbye. Share your story, share your voice, and let them know, like, hey, this is why you missed me. If you fix it, I might come back. Thank you for hearing me out. Thank you for everything you've done. I'll see you later. But that's all I wanted to say. This was a unscripted video. I didn't have any agenda or anything. I just kind of want to chat about this and see, get the information out there so that maybe inspires you to do similar things in your interview process. Um, so that's all I really have for you. If there's anything else, or if there's any questions that you have as a part of this, or something that came up during the video that you wish I dove into more in depth, leave a comment, reach out to me. I'll be happy to chat more about that. But other than that, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.